Wedding photographers of Reddit, what was your "they're not gonna last long" moment? I'm a videographer and the groom called me a couple days after the wedding. He wanted me to make sure I didn't include any footage of him checking out the women at the wedding. I've photographed a few weddings, but this comes from a time my friend bought his girlfriend a ring for Christmas. It was obviously an engagement ring. But she claimed it was just a Christmas gift. My friend agreed. We all knew he was lying. A year later they become engaged. She insists on a location wedding. She wants to fly off and get married on a tropical island. My friend profusely apologizes to me, tells me he wanted me as a best man, but she wants her best friend's husband as the best man. I don't go to the wedding. The bachelor party took place after their honeymoon. We were all drinking and having a good time. He tells me that the ring from Christmas was his first engagement ring to her, but it wasn't good enough. She was just a showy girl and needed a bigger rock. He spent twice as much on the second ring. It's been 3 years since that bachelor party. They have been divorced for a year. She's now pregnant by a man as old as her father. No joke. I recognized the groom from a grinder. I did a wedding for an acquaintance and her husband. Day goes great, I'm really happy with almost everything I took, everyone was feeling it and having fun. But, and this is one of the reasons I quit photography, the bride sees some of the photos I had sent her, and immediately is calling me. I need you to do the editing magic and make me look skinny. John was saying I was going to look too fat in my dress and wanted me to lose weight, but I knew you could just edit it, so haha I didn't. So I have to explain, this is like 2010, I can only Photoshop so much, i.e. I can make you look a tad slimmer in certain photos without making it noticeable. But I can't do it to all of them, and if I was to, the editing would be noticeable, and I will have to charge you a lot of money to edit you in all the photos. She tried to convince me to edit hundreds of photos for a couple $100, and I have other jobs going and had given them a great deal already, so explained I couldn't. So she insists I do at least some of her main pics. I tell her when people see the rest of the pics they will see the difference. She didn't care and insisted more. So I do, and a couple weeks later when I thought it was all done and history, calls me and leaves me a voicemail of how I ruined her wedding. Her new husband is upset at how she looks in the pics and keeps making remarks about her weight. So didn't seem like they were in a great place from the get-go. While shooting video, I attached a microphone to the groom for audio and proceeded to prepare for the ceremony. Just as I was about to adjust my audio settings, the groom stepped into another room with a friend. As I put on my headphones, I overheard the groom confiding in his friend, describing the wedding as a wedding of convenience and reassuring them not to be concerned about what would happen in their relationship. Wedding was on a golf course. Bride had a vision she wanted of her husband driving up on a golf cart to see her for a first look. He got one look at her from the top of the hill and vaulted the cart, ran down the hill, picked her up and twirled her around to tell her how gorgeous she was. We caught it all. It was the best first look ever. Once he set her down, she straightened herself and looked back to us. Okay, I don't want that. Let's do the golf cart now. And she sent him back up. Bride looked visibly miserable the entire ceremony. While photographing the men's getting ready portion, the groom repeatedly kept joking about killing himself. During the toast, the bride ran off to the bathroom for about 30 minutes and came back wiping her tears with her eyes red and puffy. Neither of them had any chemistry at all. It made no sense why they were together to me. That was the last wedding I shot. In another life, I worked catering shifts. Loads of Saturday weddings. I'll never forget the best man's toast of the groom. It was a shameless roast. He spoke openly about the groom's willingness to shag anything when he's drunk. He then went on and on about the groom's deadly gambling habit and his short fuse when he doesn't win. He asked the stone-faced groom *, how many thousands of dollars in golf clubs have you destroyed or lost in countless pawns? *, nobody was laughing. The bride had tears in her eyes and the groom's parents sat in stunned silence. One of those hotel venues that can run 2 weddings at the same time. Bride from our wedding is found in a hotel room with the groomsmen from the other wedding doing coke before the first dance. End result was we got paid and told no need to edit or deliver pics. Safe to say it didn't last the night. This was 15 years ago or so. I left wedding photography a few months later. The reception was at their home. They didn't want photos at the ceremony, and didn't want wedding party/family photos between the ceremony and reception triggering the first raise of the eyebrow on my end. At the reception the groom didn't want his brother, the best man, in the photos. Other eyebrow goes up. The mothers of both the bride and groom both scolded me to let them be and told me to eat instead of take photos. The groom and the best man got unholy drunk and had a word by play of brother making way too many toasts and the groom making grossly inappropriate speeches of what he's going to do to the bride on the honeymoon. As the newlyweds were making their grand departure, the bride tosses the bouquet, everyone cheers. The groom shouts, "I knocked the bitch up so hard she's got 2 babies in her coochie." Guests react in various ways of shock and happiness about the pregnancy test, but the best man lunges at the groom shouting and swearing. Family holds the best man back as the couple runs out to a car. The groom flipped off the spectators, and pulled out of the driveway. 2 houses down the car stops, the groom gets out and pukes on a neighbor's lawn, the bride gets in the driver's seat and takes off, leaving her husband yerking into a flower bed, and the best man ran down the street trying to flag down the car. Divorced 4 months later. Went to a wedding during college to my friends that got married who graduated 2 years prior to me. They had a beautiful wedding on a boat off the Keys, and as the best man gave his speech, he was really drunk by this point, just shouted out, "You don't deserve her, you literally got a blowjob from a stripper, no make that 2 strippers at your bachelor party. Peace out." He dropped the mic and tried to do a dramatic exit, but by this point we were all stuck on this boat in the middle of the ocean. It took an hour to get back to port, and it was the most awful and awkward hour of our lives for everyone on that boat. The engagement session. The couple was in from out of town because she had just taken the bar exam to become a lawyer. At the end of the session, I gave them a prompt to share with each other what they were proud of each other for. He couldn't think of a single thing. Somehow they still got married, complete with the groom drinking 11 IPAs and several shots before the ceremony, mother of the bride so drunk for family photos she pretended to strip, and the groom and all the groomsmen wearing camo hats with neon orange letters that said titties and beer. For the entire wedding day. Including sunset couples photos where he refused to do anything I suggested, nearly spat chew right on my feet, kept farting on purpose, and loudly complained about how all he wanted was to go have sex. Said this before. Third wedding, and the best man, the groom's brother, starts his speech. "Well, welcome back everyone. Good to see some new faces and some old ones. I think my first clue was when the bride showed up with some bad makeup, clearly trying to cover her black eye, while most of the rest of the family seemed far more into the free food and booze than the wedding itself. Oh yeah, never paid me either. Classy people. Ooh, finally one of these I can contribute to. My mother was a wedding photographer till I was about 18 to 19, and I helped out on many of them. The one that stands out the most was when we were at a campsite where both the wedding and reception were being held. About halfway through the reception I hear the groom start laughing maniacally. I peeked over his way and could see 2 groomsmen hauling the thrashing and screaming bride towards the lake. They threw her into the freezing cold water with her veil and dress still on. When she got out of the water I genuinely thought she might shoot somebody. Saying she looked like a drowned rat would have been an insult to rats. Her hair and makeup and probably the dress were ruined beyond repair. The fact that the groom laughed and didn't do anything stuck with me as being a dog shit move even as a teen. Apparently she thought so too, because they didn't even make it 6 months. What's the best pickup line you've ever heard? When I was teaching kindergarten, one of my students, who knew I love video games, dropped this one on me. "You're pretty. You should come to my house after school and we can play Little Big Planet. My mom makes great snacks." His mom and I had a good laugh about it at pickup time. This girl I used to work with and I went to a bar after work and were having fun, and she leans over to tell me a joke. And she says, 3 boy mice and a girl mouse were all stuck in a room with no doors and no windows. One of the boy mice asked the girl mouse how to get out, and she said, "Sleep with me tonight, and I'll tell you in the morning." Next day he is gone. The second boy mouse asks the girl mouse how he got out, and she says, "Sleep with me tonight, and I'll tell you in the morning." Next day, he's gone too. So now the girl telling me this joke says to me, "Do you want to know how the last mouse gets out of the box?" And I say yes. And she says, "Sleep with me tonight, and I'll tell you in the morning." All this while staring me in the eyes and smiling. I said, "Check please bartender." I forgot to ask her in the morning, but that was the best pickup line I've ever heard. A woman once told me every time I drink tequila I wind up sleeping with someone, and then proceeded to take a shot of tequila while holding eye contact with me. A regular at a bar I worked at dropped this gem on a girl. "I'd buy you a drink, but I'd be jealous of the glass." I groaned so loud she laughed at me and walked away from him. Removed. I was at my friend's house and his 5-year-old brother grabbed one of our friends by the hand and asked if he could play her a song on his guitar. She said yes. He picked up his guitar but stopped just before strumming it, thought for about 30 seconds and said, "I don't know any songs for princesses." That little kid had way more game than 19-year-old me had. It was the first snowfall of the season. The person and I were walking around campus together. We were friends who were heading out to grab a snack in between classes. We were quietly walking when the person suddenly said to me, "The snow looks beautiful today." In my native language, my name means snow/frost/ice. Turned out they were hitting on me and I didn't realize until later. Once was at a festival where an org were giving out free condoms at a booth. One of the ladies are talking to a guy and a girl saying, "The condoms are free by the way, take as many as you want, oh but we don't have unlimited stock so please don't take more than you need." The girl picks up a condom, turns to the guy, and says, "Wanna share?" Went to a restaurant where a girl I knew from high school ended up being our waitress. Me, "What time do you get off?" Her, "Around 5 or so." Me, "Want to get off again after that?" To my amazement it actually worked. On Halloween a buddy of mine was dressed as a Viking. He asked a girl if she wanted to hear his Viking pickup line. She said yeah. So he literally picked her up and threw her over his shoulder and said he was taking her back to the boat. They dated for almost a year. At a college Halloween party, I was dressed up as Kazoe, although everyone assumed I was an angry bird, and I walked up to a woman dressed up as a golfer and told her that she could score a birdie tonight. It's a line from the movie Jackie Brown. It's short and simple, which makes it all the better. Bartender *, "Can I get you anything?" Jackie *, "I'm fine." Bartender *, "Yes, you are." A long time ago I worked in the nightclub scene. End of the night lights are up and the last stragglers are paying their tabs or trolling. One of our trawlers walks up to a woman signing her tab at the bar and interrupts her with, "Listen, when you get done here let's go back to your place and I'll fuck you in the ass for 15 minutes, leave, and never call you again because that's all the better you're going to do." The whole club went silent as everyone heard what he said. Staff literally stopped in their tracks to see what would happen next. Real world slow motion shit. She signed her tab, grabbed his hand and they left together. When I was a student at university, I saw a pretty girl eating a particular brand of yogurt at the crowded dining hall before morning classes. I had the same brand of yogurt on my tray. I asked if I could sit at her table and she nodded. I looked across the table at her and pointed at her yogurt and said with a big schmucky smile, "Ya plate or mine?" It was said with humor and not as a pickup line. I ended up marrying that pretty girl. Amazing, given the horrible first line. We were just joking around over text about some of our classes and she goes, "Personally my favorite is anatomy. I'd let you help me study later if you want." I replied, "I'd offer to help you with chemistry but I think we've already got that one figured out." I think we stunned each other into silence. What's the most fucked up thing you've seen at work? I was sorting all the psych patients that were hospitalized in my state, and got to this guy, a teenager or maybe a bit older, and he got sent to the ward because he suddenly got aggressive and started to have some episodes that he squirmed in pain/took off his clothes and things like that. Before being hospitalized he was complaining about these things, but nothing the medics did was working and nothing wrong was found, so it should be a psychiatric issue, no? Wrong, he was put in the ward for 2 or so years and lost a lot of his life, being considered insane, because he developed a rare spinal cancer that was hard to detect and caused him extreme pain. Really fucked up. I don't remember what happened to him afterward, but I'm not really optimistic that it had an happy ending. I worked at one of the busiest Walmarts in the country during spring break for 6 years. I wouldn't even know where to begin. I guess the drunk lady leaving the bathroom with her pants around her ankles while actively shitting as she walked across the front of the building and back outside into the wild. None of the workers wanted to deal with it so they parked a shopping cart over each turd until the cleaning crew came in. Once saw someone step into a bucket of hot fryer oil, it got into their shoes and everything. Was so bad that when they took the shoe off it peeled off skin with it. The person had 2nd and I believe 3rd degree burns. He never came back but I saw the pictures and it was horrific. Worked at a call center, I was in the break area on the 2nd floor and heard a guy getting into an argument with his soon-to-be ex-wife. I walked away and back into my call area and about 30 seconds later the whole call center went into lockdown. Found out that the guy decided to kill himself and jump headfirst into the concrete floor and landed right in front of my coworker. He was granted unlimited paid days off and paid therapy for the rest of the year. I saw a coworker get crushed to death under 6 tons of dirt. I helped dig his body out. Guy cut his finger in the deli slicer and tried to keep cutting lunch meat for a customer with blood everywhere. Saw a guy fall 40 floors onto a large pile of cast iron piping as I was walking off for lunch. Didn't end up eating lunch after that. Coworker ended up outing and no one in his family told his dad. The only reason his dad found out his son died was because the dad called the company to see if his son still worked there. My boss had to be the one to tell him the bad news because no one in the guy's family was willing to tell him. Airline pilot. Watched a guy die in the Nashville terminal once. Gate C10. He keeled over in his chair waiting for boarding. EMS was there almost immediately. They did CPR on him for a good 15 minutes, way past when everyone knew had passed. The part that's haunting was watching it click for his wife that he was gone. Her reaction, I'll never forget that. It's November right before Christmas 2011 and CEO told me, CTO, to fire a guy so we could make our bonuses for the year. I replied, his wife is dying of cancer and has 2 months at most to live and he has kids. Just fire me and you'll make your bonus. Without so much as a blink he said, well, what would you do? I said, I can defer some equipment purchases to the next year and that will cover the $30,000-ish you are looking for. He said, great, do that. He literally didn't care about another human being who was at the lowest of their lows. I'll never forget that, and fuck you, Rich. I used to work with special needs kids, ages 3 to 7, and one of them came up to me on a Monday morning and told me her dad died over the weekend, then skipped off to go play with the rest of the group. I learned later that day that he had overdosed on heroin, and I'm assuming she hadn't fully understood what being dead meant, and that she thought she might see him again. Worked with a guy at a retail store. He came in one day with one red eye and the other normal, so I asked if he was okay. He said yes and said his pet rabbit scratched him while he was playing with it. I didn't think anything of it until about 3 days later when he got arrested, charged with the murder of a pregnant woman and her fetus. He partly dismembered her body to try to hide his tracks, and when he realized that wouldn't work, he then burned her house down with her body inside. That's when I realized that those scratches were really from her fighting for her life. His name is Matthew Brush, and as far as I know, he's still in prison. Opioid addiction patient would inject directly into open wounds in her biceps. And I'm not talking small wounds. Both her biceps were eaten away. There were little thready bits of tissue that were inconvenient because they would get caught on stuff, so she cut them. She was in her mid-20s but had started using as a teenager with her mom. She would get bloodstream infections and heart infections and leave before finishing treatment. Edit. Obligatory highest comment edit. Once witnessed a group of 15 to 16-year-old teenagers steal an older man's wallet in the mall. They ran past the coffee shop I worked in and went up the escalator closely followed by the man. Next thing I knew, I heard screaming and fighting and smelled metal, which turned out to be a shit ton of blood. Turns out, the man got into a fight with them and then got stabbed. That entire half of the mall got shut down by the police and the smell lingered for the rest of that day. I worked in an assembly line, making skyjacks. A female coworker was cleaning a base with her hand on a tire. Another worker was testing the tires, and when she tested the tire that the girl was resting her hand on, it forced her arm into a 1 inch gap in the base. I couldn't even squeeze my pinky in this gap. She was stuck in this machine for about 4-5 minutes, arm completely shattered. Everyone was in a panic trying to get her arm out, but they literally had to disassemble the whole thing. The screams still haunt me.